Okay, so last video we went ahead and we worked on getting our bucket library, what do you want to call this? But basically it's called the Voltage and Fluid Modular, working and functional, and we spent the whole time, of course, working on the bucket itself after all. I got everything else pretty much working, but the good thing is I actually ended up poking around in the Forge channel and asking for help, and I got G Hertz, I wonder how his name is pronounced. He sort of helped me, and Fry poked in every so often to kind of tell me that what I'm doing is the wrong way to do it. But regardless of all that, I did get it working. It did take a bit of hackery because, well, without much help on how to do it the correct way, I pretty much have to do it the wrong way, which I don't like doing, but if without a better option, here's what I ended up with. So we weren't getting transformations loading. Everything else looked fine. From what I can tell, everything else looked fine, and nobody else could see really major problems with the model itself. After all, this is the same model that Forge uses, and it functions, though saying that doesn't give it much credibility. After all, I'm discovering minor problems with the Forge model as well. I'll go ahead and show these off, but this is what we ended up coming up with, is just going into the deserializer, so you know the block state deserializer here, and copying the code it used to make this. So this does work, and eventually if we ever do figure out why the transformations aren't loading, this code will disable itself. So if ever we get actual transformations, this will work. So that's a good thing. So it's just kind of is a backup functionality in case the model fails to load, which is what's happening right now. Is I don't think these models are actually loading whatsoever because, well, we aren't using the data from them, so we can't confirm if any part of the data is actually being loaded. So the thought process is we're not getting anything. Now, I actually did spend some time looking at the serializer and running a lot of debug lines. I couldn't find anywhere where it actually tried to load it, so I'm just going to assume it doesn't work. So we're just going to leave it at that, and I'm not going to screw with it because the plan is to get it to 112 sometime today. That's the goal. Sometimes before 3 o'clock, probably even before 1 o'clock if I can pull it off, to get to 112 and get done. So that's what we're going to focus on, is getting this finished up. We're going to spend time testing. Now, I'm not going to release a version for 1.8.19 right away. I want to backport what I currently have to 1.8, toy with it, test it. I badly need to test this code because there's a lot of problems that I know are probably there that need to be unit tested. I don't want to release a version until I've actually had time to work with it. After all, if a bucket breaks, it actually can be pretty detrimental because I know there's a couple fluids that do exist in the game that are pretty expensive. Although the only thing that comes to mind is UU matter, and that's not really expensive. But anyways, this is the Forge's bucket. If you turn on Universal Bucket and you register fluids, it'll actually register fluids. So I registered oil, milk, and fuel bucket. We can see that they render exactly the same colors here. So it looks like my colors are being indeed controlled via various different things. And this doesn't really animate. Now that's the weird thing, is we seem to have lost a little bit of functionality, and I'm not quite sure what happened there. But I know in 1.8 these were animating. And I wonder if I just need to go ahead and pick up something that has a much stronger animation. Let me go ahead and get out of creative mode, because you can't pick up fluids in creative mode. And pick this up, and then go to game mode 1. So yeah, okay, the animations are working. For some reason, we're not really getting animations on this stuff, even though these do have animation files. I wonder if I registered them wrong. Now, that's what I think maybe that's happening, because if lava's working, then these guys aren't working. That means the code is there. But one of the cool advantages of the model baking system is that it actually does use the legitimate fluid. So it's using this texture here to actually animate the background. It's got some kind of cool cookie cutter system where you give it a texture of what I want the outline to look like, and it cookie cutters. It does the same exact thing to this, although the way Forge does theirs is a lot different than what I do with mine. They actually use 3 textures. I'm using 2 for mine, so they end up with this system. And theirs looks actually pretty good, but theirs isn't animating either. And unless I register a lava bucket with theirs, it isn't going to work. One of the things I do want to show off, which is the problem I'm having right now, is that there is a slight coloration problem with buckets. See, if you look at the back, it's really bright. And if you look at the top, it's really dark. And it's doing the same thing in the inventory. It's really dark. If you toss it on the ground, it's really dark. And it's doing that to like all of the fluids. Fuel, for example, if we look at this, that's like kind of what I want the color to look like for fuel. And you look at this, and it almost looks like oil from the top. And like oil is even worse if you actually look at it. It's like pure black on the one side. Yeah. And the Forge buckets are having the same exact problem. So really bright, really dark. So this is a problem where I copied some code from Forge thinking I'd be okay. and it doesn't really work that way. And it's affecting pretty much everything. It doesn't affect the vanilla buckets. So here's a vanilla milk bucket. Of course, it's, well, actually, it's getting a little dark shadow on the opposite side, but I think that is part of the Minecraft lighting engine for that to be dark on one side and light on the other. Because it doesn't seem to affect it on the ground, and it renders perfectly fine in the inventory. Now, of course, when it comes to the vanilla stuff, these are single icon textures. Forge uses 3, and I use 2, so that's kind of maybe where the problem is stemming from. It's somewhere in the bake system is where this bug is more than likely. It's somewhere down here. So we bake both sides of the texture in order to kind of get it working. So you have just a flat base texture, and then we kind of have... Well, actually, why do we have 2 textures? This is, this may be where the problem is. See, we're only using 1 texture for the base. Then why are we using 2 textures for this? That is an interesting thought, is what is going on that we require 2 textures. In the name of science, we're going to have to find out. So I'm going to go ahead and close the game. And I'm going to go ahead and start by first getting rid of the cells. So we'll go ahead and we'll test just the north render, and we'll see how that affects our render system. And then we're not going to toy around with this too long, as it works. I mean, if it's a little darker on one side versus the other, not too big of a deal. I mean, most of you guys won't even care, as long as you can pick up your fluids and everything else. I know I'll have a few people complain about the aesthetics not being quite right. Theoretically, you guys can load up resource packs and still change the aesthetics. Now, you can't customize per fluid yet, so there is still only 1 texture for all the fluids. I am going to change that. I actually have been asking around to see what I can do to do various other things. So I had a pause there. So I'm sitting over the reading IRC chat. Somebody's asking about how to register tile entities. I'm actually kind of curious how to do that in the new version. So when 1.12, the latest version, they changed how registration works for everything, and I think there's a registration event for tile entities now, but I'm not exactly sure, and I don't want to answer the guy's question. It pulled us over. He's asking that. So it was like, oh yeah. So as I was saying, I am going to make it so you guys can, who make texture packs and resource packs, be able to pick your own customizations. And it looks like we do have a problem with doing that. So it looks like this is used to register 2 different sides. So it looks like the north side is darker. Because if we go this way, so that's the bright side, which is the south one. So that's cool. So we figured that out. So it doesn't quite make sense. Now, what might actually be going on is somebody did suggest to this on Twitter that I may be passing back the wrong color. So we are using a system like this, and that actually does look a lot different than what my old fluid color is. So let me grab this, and we're going to go take a look in comparison to my fluid VE here. And look at that, there actually is a noticeable difference between these 2. So this could be partially why something I've had a few issues. I may not be passing back alpha. So that is actually a problem. We can fix that too. So we are storing RGB. And here's another problem right there. So what I was told is that you want to do get, it should be get RGBA. Is there not a get RGBA? How do you do that then? So there's a transparency component. Can colors actually even store alpha? I'm pretty sure they can. So let's take a look at this and see if we can figure out what's up here. So there's an alpha component. RGB, yeah, so red, green, blue, and alpha. So alpha is applied, but how do you convert backwards? Is there a way to do that? There's RGB, there's RGBA, so there's a value here. I'm going to say if you call get RGB and you had an alpha component to it, I think it'll just give you the alpha component. So I think if you put a 1 at the end of this, that's an alpha of 1, so that should work. And I'm just going to go ahead and do this. Oh, and it looks like maybe not. How does this? Maybe you have to do 255. Yeah, it's 255 because it's a collar system. Okay. That could be causing the problem, and that, I mean, the collars look the same, so it's not an issue there. So we'll go ahead and close this and we'll reload, and we'll see if that works. This should also affect our blocks. Our blocks have been having some collar problems. I posted on Twitter. Let's see what else. Oh, they're actually talking about that game registry thing. So it looks like you still there's still no event for it. Yeah, it looks like what they're saying is when you do tile entities, you just go ahead and register them with the block thing, which is, yeah, that would work pretty well. The thing with tile entities is they weren't really time specific anyways. I know from like all the versions of Minecraft I've worked on, you could literally register a tile entity even after the game has started and it would still work. I actually did that a few times to help fix bugs and correct for issues. There's also cool things you can do, like I did this to somebody's mod one time, is that I couldn't fix their tile entity because I couldn't get the ASM and stuff to function. So instead of doing it that way, I reflected into the tile array and I changed the tile that got created to my version of the tile, which then extended their tile so I didn't have cast exceptions. And of course I made sure there wasn't any class check problems as well. So it worked, and it's some of the things you can actually do to fix bugs. It's not something you're supposed to do, and eventually they probably will make it so you can't do it, because that feels really hacky, and Forge Team doesn't really like hacky solutions, and I know this because I get yelled at every so often. Okay, so lava, you know what, even if changing the collar, I don't think it actually was going to fix our problem. And you know what? It just broke our fluids. Yeah. So that's not a solution. Oh wait, you know what? We actually screwed up right there. Oops. We get any exceptions from that? Now, there's not a lot of what I've really noticed about the newer versions of Minecraft and Forge is there's a lot of missing arrow states. There's a lot of things that the game really should complain about that it doesn't complain about. And quite a few people have been commenting about this, that you could give bad information to the game and it will load that information up. It will completely break and then it won't tell you. It'll be like, oh yeah, your stuff's working just fine. The fact that I can have a transparent object like that, there should be some kind of error notation in there that goes like, hey, this is broken. But there's not like that. There's a lot of other problems where blocks aren't loading correctly and a few other things that error states should exist for. For example, I had an issue when I was working on this fluid mod where my textures weren't loading. And I couldn't figure out why my textures weren't loading. It turns out in the model bucket here, when I define a model, I have to tell it what textures I want to load. And this was confusing because I assumed when you went to go use a texture, that was the same as telling it you wanted to load it. Now, of course, I was completely wrong in that thinking because it makes sense for this to exist. You're not going to be able to load textures without telling the game what textures you want to load. But there's no error state for that. So there's nothing down here that says, okay, when I start to use a texture location, there is no error that goes, hey, that texture doesn't exist. And that really should be a thing there because that would have saved me hours of work. I spent 4 hours just on that problem, back and forth talking to a couple of the developers, and I got nowhere. Speaking of which, I'm getting nowhere over here either. I was actually trying to ask for help in that channel as well. I just remembered that. So yeah, our stuff's working again. And I'm not noticing any real difference between the collars here. It pretty much looks the same. So it's, well, actually, you know what? It's not as noticeable, but that could just be my brain just short-circuiting. Yeah, because that's noticeable with brighter fluids. Let me try the fuel bucket. Yeah, so it's still noticeable, and it's, yeah, this is a bug we're not going to spend a huge amount of time on. So we're going to go ahead and skip past this, and I'll just go ahead and what I'll do is I'll pop open GitHub here, and I'll just add it to my tracker, and I'll fix it later. After all, the goal is to get to 112 sometime today so I can make sure this mod pack gets the mod, and I don't have to then go, hey, can you update this mod pack? And they go, yeah, we'll hit it like next week, and then I just lose my opportunity, yeah, in order to promote the mod. So we'll go 1.9. This is probably a bug in 1.8 too. Icon colors. Render fluid render color. Inside the bucket model, and follow is rendering darker than the other. And what I'm going to do is really quickly open up my screenshot folder and make sure I throw screenshots in here. It's a really good idea when you're ever complaining about a bug report. And even though I'm doing this for myself, it's kind of useful. And these are like the 4 screenshots I actually want to grab. And we'll just toss them in there. There we go, and we just want to go ahead and put this as a bug. Technically, this would be an enhancement because it's not game breaking, but yeah. So you can see. I mean, I'm horrible at cropping screenshots. that's not what I wanted to say. You could see on that, but that's yeah, pretty hilarious. Okay, so now that we got all this set up, we got our fluids working. I mean, they function. We can place them. You can't pick them up with vanilla buckets though, which I actually am going to have to fix because it's actually a game-breaking bug. Because if I for example grab this and I come over here where I just placed this at, so game mode 0, and I grab that, oh, actually it would give me a forge bucket back. But if it wasn't, if it didn't do the forge bucket, it would have gave me a water bucket, which is what it does when you don't have it registered. So that is something I'm going to have to fix. But it looks like Forge has actually got my back on that one, so if I register the bucket, that's a good temporary solution. I'm not going to do that, of course, as I want all of the bucket things to go to my bucket over here because this actually has some cool functionality. For example, if you had a machine that can only accept 200 millibuckets, these are really cool for that. There actually is a couple mods that I've seen that do that. I can't remember their names off the top of my head because, well, yeah. Anyways, so we want to really quickly just kind of test to make sure we can place fluids here correctly. So yeah, it looks like the lava will place. And of course we already did light fuel, so. And then, you know, I need to make these, oh, that's, that is an unexpected behavior. I was actually hoping that would catch on fire or explode. But it looks like it's picking up some water logic behavior. Yeah, that's actually kind of cool. This should catch on fire though, but I would have to customly code that, and I'm not going to do it. At least I'm not going to do it right now. I probably will come back in here later and I'll maybe grab Azzy or somebody who worked on Buildcraft and ask them how they did theirs. Because I know that the Buildcraft stuff explodes. So fluid interaction does work. Let's grab some new buckets though real quick. And I want to, can I stack these guys? No. Can I stack the base ones? Yeah, the base ones will stack. Then what I also want to go ahead and test is I want to get out of game mode here and I want to make sure that the buckets work properly. Another thing we do need to test, is the reason why I don't want to go ahead and release, is that I don't have a confirmation if oh, these won't stack, so there is a problem. Okay, that's a bucket. That's an iron bucket. I just, okay, is there, you know what, I need to make a new texture. And I need to make sure that I actually have a texture that does not look like the vanilla one. Okay, so these are both my buckets, but why is one called a bucket and one's called an iron bucket? I know what's going on here. Okay, so what's happening is that we actually do have, this is a materialless bucket. So there's no material assigned to this bucket. This one is an iron bucket, so the material is iron. So there actually is a defect in the Creative tab registration code that we need to go fix. So good thing we caught that. So let's see, because it's not really a major issue. This is actually more of a cosmetic problem. Materials are almost entirely cosmetic, except at certain points, the material actually does play functionality. For example, the wooden bucket will turn into a charred bucket when exposed to lava, can catch you on fire, and can leak. So those are some things that that bucket has. So if we don't fix this, this will show up actually as a gameplay problem later. So this will be item fluid bucket, and if we go all the way down the bottom, I think it's down here somewhere. What it looks like is we create all the materials. Here's supported fluid textures. Actually, what we need to do is we just need to go for like every fluid that we can use and just register them all. Because with the way the bucket renders now, we actually pick up the... Yeah, we'll go ahead and do that. So how does this work? So it creates a new item. So what we actually want to do, instead of registering with the default, we want to make sure we actually are grabbing an ID of some kind. And I think we just do this bucket materials dot or bucket material handler dot some, like, there should be a list of materials here. Yeah, get materials, and then we just want to get the first one. Is there not a way to just grab the first item? I can just do this. It's like a really cheaty way to do it. The meta value. I don't recommend ever doing this because that's a really fun code, but it does work. And then what we want to do here is we want to register fluids. So fluid registry dot fluids. It should be like, is there not like a list of all fluids? Get registered fluids, and then we want the values. There we go. And then of course we still want to leave our null check here. Is I've actually seen people register null to fluid even though you're not supposed to do it. But we're going to go ahead and do a check there because it's better safe than sorry. And then this way we can also do this. Yeah, that'll work. So this will register all of our fluid. Oh, and I died too. Can I guess I can respawn. Did I just like warp when I respawned? Yeah, but I got creeper still enabled. Game mode on. At least this isn't as bad as Ark Survival. I don't even get out of the title screen half the time when I play that game. So we'll go ahead and close this. And oh, I actually really didn't need to close that, but I could have just hit reload. But we'll go ahead and test to see if it works. I need to kind of figure out if there's a good way I can test to see if buckets work. Let me see if I can find BuiltCraft. BuiltCraft is not really the mod I want to test against because I know BuiltCraft works correctly. It's mods like Forestry and Railcraft were the two that I actually am concerned about. Namely Railcraft because it's the reason I had to go out of my way to actually implement, if I can find the method here. It's here somewhere. Yeah, there's a big method at the top here which actually does a lot of here. There's an on right click event that I use. So with Railcraft, it would try to give you back an iron bucket no matter what, because it assumed everybody's buckets were the same. And I don't blame them because at the time when they wrote that code, that's pretty much how it worked. Everybody had an iron bucket, nobody made different buckets. I, of course, had wooden buckets, so this was a big problem because now my buckets are not compatible. And anytime you went and put a wooden bucket and you right-click to put into his tank, it gave you back an iron bucket back. And of course, I did tell him this, and he told me he would fix it, so theoretically it might have been fixed already. Yeah, that was a big exploit, so I actually had to go implement this code, and I actually need to check if this code still functions, if this code's still valid. I know for sure that I'm going to have to spend a lot of time working on it because now there's a capability system that's been implemented, which then changes how this works. There's also a capability system on the items, which change how the items behave. So there's a lot of like little nuances I actually got to do. And hello, zombie. Let's check the creative tab. So yeah, it looks like we're doing fine. So now we got iron buckets. Of course, we're still getting where it says that water bucket is a bucket. So I'm kind of confused. Because then we've got water bucket twice. I wonder what happened there. So let's pop back down to our creative tab items here. Does it actually view that as a legitimate item? It does try to get sub items from buckets. So I'm gonna put a break line here, and then we'll scroll. And then does that not reload anymore? Oh, just not getting a break line. Oh, these are bucket handlers. That's why we're not getting anything. We got no bucket handlers registered anymore. The only thing we had was Agariacraft, because Agariacraft had a special way to fill certain things. Yeah, we're still not getting any break lines. I have a feeling like this is cached now, which makes me really happy because it's not been cached for a while. It usually just regenerated like every single time you open the page, which is what it's doing right now. Okay. Wait. We have... Oh no, we have a. Oh, is it feeding me? Dude, it's feeding me everything that's on that page. I don't think it used to do that. I think it's well, actually, I think it's always done that. Yeah, I think it's always done that. It's not really reassuring when you hear me say that though. Okay, so it put one bucket on there with ID 30,000. That is the iron bucket's material ID. I actually manually set it that way. That way it's not in the way. Because the bucket I want to register as 0 is the wooden bucket, and I don't want that ID set to change because it'll screw with people's world loads. Oh, okay, here's our problem. Yeah, so we agree with that line. So that's where our issue is. Man, my phone is exploding. I know I've put quite a few tweets out today, but I'm not expecting a lot of people to retweet them, and that's exactly what's happening right now, is retweeting a lot of stuff. And unfortunately, my phone, every time somebody retweets something, my phone vibrates. So if you're ever like watching me stream and you want to screw with me, just like retweet my stuff repeatedly, and it'll mess with me because I can feel the vibration of the phone through my desk. I actually can usually feel it before I can hear it, usually most of the times, because of how my brain functions. But if I close this and I reload this, there we go. We got rid of that extra ID there. So that works really well. So that fixes that problem. So now that everything's good here, let's go ahead and pull wooden buckets into our workspace. And then make sure it functions with the new stuff. Now we're going to have to recode a few things as I went through and I did change a bit of the back end. I'm going to go ahead and... I don't remember how their site works. So we're in... Oh, do they not have a 1.9? You know, this is the problem with testing mods, is I'll go look around for mod updates, and you'll find like a scattered fest. You'll go, okay, they've updated for this version, but then they skipped 1.5.2. Then they updated for this version, then they updated for 1.7, then they got 1.8, but then they skipped 1.9, they went to 11, and they're not at 12 either. So it's really hard to find and support compatibility between mods. Most of the SMB mods I've updated, I've completely dropped mod support on them because the mods are so sporadic on their updates. Craft, for example, it was only updated to 1.10, so they skipped both 1.8 and 1.9. Then there was tea milk and whatever tree mod, I believe is what it was. They're not even updated, and I had to drop support for that one as well. And it's kind of a little frustrating. I mean, I know people are going to update however they want, but when you're offering compatibility and you have to sit here and delete a whole bunch of stuff and then re-add it, it's frustrating. Anyways, so let's get this in our workspace, and I think I'm going to have to copy it real quick. Let's see. That'll be GitHub. Let's actually check to see if I actually have it up here already. I do not. Which, by the way, this will be the 4th SMB mod we'll have updated once we're done with it. I'm going to try to do fuel cans next, although I'm going to spend some time in 1.7 with the fuel cans to fix them. I got to do that not only for my client, because the fuel can mod was actually made for a client commission. By the way, I'm not really accepting commissions anymore unless you badly need a mod. I kind of trying to get out of the freelancing business because it's so sketchy. I have now had so many people not pay me that I'm just done with it. And I don't want to go through the whole legal thing of having proper contracts, and yeah, and without those you can't really do much. So we got that, so I'm just straight out copied it in there. And I think what I want to do is I'm going to have to actually change a line in here somewhere. I think it's the Gradle build file here. Yeah, it's this line here I need to work on. Let me go ahead and close all but this, and I need to change it, although what I'm going to do is I want to ask Dmon to come back through here and fix these for me, because I think a lot of these scripts are broken. We've been having quite a bit of issues with the 1.7 scripts. We were having Lim ADC try to work on ICBM compatibility for 1.7, and yeah, he wasn't really having much luck. Anyway, so we got that line at least updated, so that way at least it's pulling the right script repo. Although the reality of it is I'm going to still have to do things. What else do we change here? You know what, I'm going to... no, I'll leave those changes. Fixed, creative tab, materials, or mat, population, toyed with colors for items. Yeah, we didn't really get much luck with that. You know, I might just do is I might just raise the color temporarily and then just go with that. That way, at least it's not as dark. I kind of want a brighter fuel color. Although the reality of it is, I can't actually even remember what fuel looks like in real life. When was the last time you've actually seen fuel? I mean, you always have it in a gas tank, a pump, or even a little can, and the cans are red, that much I know. But I actually can't remember what it looks like, and I'm depending entirely off the ideal that it's yellowish in color and somewhat transparent, simply because all the video games and mods I've played now, that's how it's been. But that's actually something I just thought of. I actually cannot remember the last time I've seen actual fuel. I might go get a glass jar and just pour some fuel out of my mower into one, just so I can see what it looks like here later. Anyways, let's go ahead and grab wooden buckets here and go ahead and synchronize it. And I'm going to go ahead and discard changes on that file since I don't know what's there. Actually, you know what? I'm not going to do that. I'm going to actually stage this. I'm going to say I've updated to 1.9, which I need to make a branch for. And I'll stage that up in the next, because I mean, it's a line that does need to be fixed. So we'll go ahead and make a branch for 1.9. Change version, or what have I been setting this to? The thing is, somebody's actually been working on the updates, so you can see there's somebody made an attempt at a 1.10 update. Who was it anyways? Mr. Trollnux. Oh yeah, he was one of our interns that I want to say pretended to actually do things, and he didn't do squat. I mean, he did some work. He didn't really get far because he tried to depend almost 100% on us to tell him what to do. And if you actually are an intern for BuiltBrokenModding, we don't handhold you too much. We kind of expect you to self-learn. I mean, we'll answer questions, but we're not going to handhold. And he wanted a handhold almost all the time. Although we didn't officially let him out of the group, so technically he's still part of the team. Anyways, set empty version to 1.9.4. Go ahead and commit that. That way we populate the branch. I am just going to go flat out delete the 1.10 branch of his because I've changed so much about this mod. He's working off the old version, and the reality of it is the new version is completely different. So you feel like you can still see an item bucket in here. The new version of wooden buckets doesn't even have an item class. It's the reason why we have this fluid system over here. Is it's how it functions. Anyways, project structure. So we're gonna go ahead and add this in here. New modular, and I just want to go ahead and select it. I think I realize I'm starting to talk a mile a minute. I apologize if I'm talking really quick on this, but I haven't had much sleep the last few days, and I'm pretty much wired on purely caffeine and coffee, tea, whatever, just to try to function. So let's see, SMB, wooden buckets, hit finish. Yes, go ahead and override. That was, I forgot to clean out the workspace from the last version. Oh cool, this one's actually got all the dependencies checkmarked. It's a really annoying thing, is when you're working on this, and in some of the older versions you'll be wanting to export your dependencies, and they'll just, all of them will be unexported. And then you want to do this setup, which I'm doing right here, and you can't. It's like, oh, we don't really want to do your dependency checks. Which, by the way, for those people that has issues with importing resources, if you actually mark this as a resource and you have problems, you can mark it as source, and it will actually work correctly, although occasionally you'll have to hit rebuild to get it to populate. But yeah, so that's working, and this is going to just have quite a few errors in it real quick, but it won't take long to fix. Because really, we only have 3 classes for this. But the parts that are going to break is this stuff here. Actually, not this stuff. This stuff is easy to fix. Yeah, this stuff is just a matter of... one of the biggest complaints I have with the new versions is sometimes they change things unnecessarily. It's kind of cool that they are trying to match the Java standards of having things capitalized and stuff. But the problem with doing that is you make a lot of unnecessary work. And it's frustrating is a way to put it. Anyways, I need, this is fluids.milk.fluid. Let's remap. And then do this real quick. This part actually doesn't really matter much because not a lot of people actually even gave a crap about this fix. And I need to do this. And Actually, I wonder if there's a... I know there's a remap for this, but is there like a clear map? Skip item block. Cannot skip an item block. Cannot skip an item that is a block. I actually am really... Yeah, there's an ignore. So action equals ignore. So we're going to try that. Because what I want to do is if you go down and the fluid doesn't exist, so if it's null, I just want to ignore it because that means whoever was running the configs just disabled loading of the fuel or loading of the fluid, and you just kind of want to ignore it. So I'm going to say missing mapping dot ignore. There we go. We don't want to ignore this mapping, but we do want to ignore this guy because it doesn't matter so much. Actually, no, we don't want to ignore it because we want to tell them that they are missing a block. So we'll go ahead and leave that there. And surprisingly, everything else is working correctly. We do need to change a few things, though. So we do need to actually register ourselves with the Forge event bus, which is not this thing. So Minecraft forge.eventbus.register, because we're going to set up some new events. Some of the events we're going to do real quick is we need to do a event, actually just to register this, so public void register bucket materials. So I got some inspiration from the 1.12 version of Minecraft, or from Forge, and I'm going to start actually using a lot of these events to register various things. And it's a lot nicer in my opinion because it's more flexible. Where a lot of the ways I've been doing it in 1.7, even though it does the same function, it is not as flexible. But we're going to do pretty much this. Actually, copy this guy. This is not the final way it's going to look like. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create... Well, actually, you know, this won't work right here. And there's a reason it won't actually work. So this is her. Actually, you know what? I can just do. I can't do it this way either. Because the problem with this is that this gets called after this. So I actually have to think of how I want to do it. I guess I'm just going to do it this way. I'm just going to copy the whole contents of this. It's not the way I want to do it, but it'll work. I actually need to get rid of these configs badly because I don't like the way it's done this way, and I want people to be able to decide per material what configs they actually... I think you still can, but there's a little bit more work to be done there, and it doesn't feel right. Anyway, subscribe event, and then in here we want to do bucket material registration event dot pre. So this is called in our actual fluid modular. So if we actually go here, so this is something I actually added. So we actually call a pre and a post. So pre is called the register all your fluids. Posted is called afterwards. So that way you can edit settings and stuff. So say for example, I had a mod that depended on another mod and I wanted to change its settings. This is the way to do it. There's also for the bucket materials, there's a registration event. This is actually for fluids. This is, to be honest, is not even necessary. The only reason I populate this is that this lets you register fluids via this system. So say you want to go and ask for oil to be loaded or something. You can populate it in the pre system. And then in the post you can modify settings. So like after oil is created, you can go ahead and create blocks for it and everything else. But the reason I did this is because we're registering items and blocks in the pre in it. We were actually originally doing this in the post, which is a bad way to do it. So yeah, there's quite a few things that have to be fixed. But that looks good. So I think we can get wooden buckets running now. I'm going to hit rebuild and see, make sure I didn't miss anything. Everything looks good. Surprise, I mean, we really don't have a lot of change. Yeah, that should work. Localization still work. We do have to edit configurations. You have to tell it to run wooden buckets now. It's kind of an order of operation thing. Your most hierarchy version, if you're actually having multiple mods too, the way you can cheat it is just make a new modular and import everything as submodules into it. IntelliJ isn't really designed for the multiple project system, but it can be tweaked to actually do it. I think they actually gave us features like that intentionally for that, where you can make empty modulars, but I don't know, and I have not read the documentation enough. But hopefully this will work, so we'll get this done, and we'll move on to 1.10, and then 11, then 12, and then I'm done for the day. Actually, sad truth is, even after I get all this done, I gotta then do a bit of schoolwork, and then somewhere around 5 today, I then get to go interact with the mod pack that I've actually been trying to get this mod squeezed in and actually participate and try to promote my mods as best as possible, which is might not happen. Anyways, what did I break? Oh, that could be a problem. What are you even called by? Actually, better yet, why are you even null? So for some reason, the bucket didn't get initialized? I'm confused. Because it's registered... Yeah, it's registered in the items right here. Is this not working, maybe? No, it should be... What? Okay, so... What actually null point on this line is a good question. I actually have a feeling it's the material here. So yeah, I think it's the material, and I think what's happening is it's just not setting the material. So let's go back to the wooden buckets here. And what I think is happening is this event is not subscribing correctly. So I'm going to put a break line here. Oh yeah, this would be a problem. Okay, I see what I broke. So public wooden buckets. I need to tell it to register earlier. So by the time it registers that event, it's not going to work. That's where the issue is. I think I'm going to pull requests in the Forge to ask for an event that fires before pre-end hit, just so I can register listeners. So let's see. I watch the same guy just ask this. It's the sad thing about it. Like, there's GHZ has been about the only person answering help requests in this channel. I've got kind of mad respect for him for that now, because he's the only guy that's really been helping as far as I've seen. Although it may just be the time zone I'm awake in that he may be the only one helping. Because to be honest, I actually have seen other people. Like if I do scroll up my chat, yeah, there's occasionally somebody else jumps in. It's really rare though. That's one of the bigger problems with modding. It's the reason the modding community is not as big as it really should be, is that there is not a really solid help base. And did we crash again? Crap. I have a way to fix this. Okay, grab all this junk. This is where you can tell I'm sleep deprived, is I'm not thinking this through very well. As what I could do is, rather than doing that, and rather than creating it, is what I could do is I just simply create it down here. And then, yeah, okay. So you create it down here, and then you set the configs up there. So that'll work. And I need more brain power here. Just pull a Guardians of the Galaxy and connect a lemon to my head. Surprisingly, actually drinking some lemon juice probably would work, but I don't have any. The closest thing I have is I think I have some fruit juice, maybe. That's if my brother didn't get to it first. It's a really, really crappy thing about being practically broke. The only thing you can really afford is water, soda, and ramen noodles. And even the soda, I'm mainly mooching that off my brother because I don't buy any for myself anymore. I tried to switch almost 100% to tea, and that has not been working well. That's where when people say soda is not an addictive thing, it is, because when you try to have somebody who's drunken it most of their life and you try to go off of that, it's actually physically painful, and that's a good sign of an addiction, is when something's physically painful to remove from your life and you have that desire to go back towards it, then that means you're addicted to it, either mentally or physically. And I'm not sure which of those two I'm done to, because I don't think it's a mental thing, but it's quite not a physical thing either. But then again, I'm not a doctor, so I don't have any clue either way. My brother's trying to be, so I probably should ask him, but then again, in his opinion, I should stop any caffeine because I've got heart problems. Yeah, we have an oak bucket. You know what's really bad about that is that that changed from something else to that, so I'm hoping the IDs didn't scramble. But it does look nice, so birch, charred, oak, iron bucket, arcana, jungle, dark oak, spruce bucket. These aren't, I guess they're alphabetized by, yeah, they're alphabetized. Now it's not really any way to fix that either. That's a vanilla thing. But it does show that it's working. Why? Oh, that's oil. That's why that looks as dark as it is. So that, yeah, it looks fine. So yeah, so we got this all working, and then let's go ahead and place it, even though there shouldn't be any functionality difference. And then the next thing I need to test is lava. Man, it's using birch as the default. Yeah, there we go. So it charred into my inventory. And then if I turn out of creative mode, I should take damage. Yep. There we go. So that's all working. And then the lava leaking thing is something I need to test here later. But I don't think it even worked in the 1.7 version because I went to go look at it and it was trying to set things to error blocks. So there's definitely a functionality problem there that needs to be fixed in 1.7.10. And what I'll probably do is I'll spend some time on 1.7.10 fixing it, and then I'll port it to the next version up. Although I think I've already fixed it in 1.8. Why are you coming my direction? Oh, whatever. Zombie AIs are weird. But that's pretty much it of the video there. So we got everything functional. Wooden Buckets is updated. So now we're just going to, in the next video, jump to 1.10 and 11, and then 12, and then see what problems face us, and pray that the render doesn't break, because it was working in 1.8 and then it broke in 1.9 and I had to fix it again, and I have a feeling that 1.10, 11, and 12 I'm going to have to fix it again and without much fail. But anyways, I'll see you in the next episode.